Our reading today shows a great crowd following Jesus. You can find it in Matthew 12 and Mark 3. We see this enormous crowd following Jesus, who was taking a rest with his disciples. But the crowd came nonetheless, and as we see Jesus typically do, he accepted them and healed and attended to them. Now, this crowd was a bit different. It was primarily a group of Gentiles or non-Jews. We read in the gospel that Jesus' primary mission was to minister to the Jews. In fact, we will see just a few chapters later in Matthew 15, where Jesus is telling a Canaanite woman that he was sent for the Jews, not for others, and therefore he could not help her. But here in Matthew 12, we see Jesus not only ministering to Gentiles, we see the prophecy from Isaiah that proclaims that Messiah will bring justice to the Gentiles, and that in him, Jesus, the Gentiles will have hope. And just like in Matthew 15, with the Canaanite woman's persistence, we see Jesus obliging her request. Let's take a few moments and look at this crowd of Gentiles. Or better put, let's look at us as that crowd of Gentiles and see if we can glean some much needed instruction of how we present ourselves to Messiah. First, why is the crowd there? That's a simple thing to answer because Jesus had healed many. His fame and reputation had grown that he had the ability to heal people. So naturally, those that were sick sought him out so that they could be healed as well. I don't think this is a bad thing. If I had a disease that doctors couldn't cure, or if a family member was sick and I heard there was a person that could heal the infirmity, you better believe that I would be in that group. But when do we come to Jesus? Do we find ourselves only coming to him when we need something? Is our prayer life limited to only personal requests, as if Jesus was a customer support line that the only time we call it is when we need something fixed? I think we need to take a moment and truly ask ourselves how much time we spend with Jesus. And out of that time, how much of it is spent asking God for things, telling God about our problems and wanting him to give us something. Again, asking God for things isn't wrong, but should it be the only interaction with God that we have? Should it dominate our conversation with him? As we continue to read in the text, we see this group or a similar group choosing not to follow Jesus as his ministry continues. As we see his ministry head towards the cross, we see the crowds thinning out. We see less people choosing to follow him, recognizing where the path was leading, which would not give them personal gain that they might have desired. As Jesus' message of dying to self and sacrificing one's own good for the good of others, the expectation of a warrior Messiah coming to vanquish their enemies and to bring them into glory and riches and a comfortable life, ended up, as the text shows today, with Messiah called not to quarrel or fight back, but to speak a message of peace, love, and care for others. Their hopes of glory, riches, and comfort ended up not to be the message that Jesus would deliver. What about us? What are we asking God for? And what happens when God does something else? What do we do when we ask God to take away the problem, but instead, God provides a tool for us to go through the problem instead? Do we lash out telling God that he didn't do what we asked? Do we stop believing because our request wasn't answered in the way we expected? All of a sudden, our trust in God wavers because we didn't get what we wanted. Instead, we get what God desires that will actually be better for us, that will bring us to a place that is beyond our wildest dreams. The difference is that it will take a little work. It will take struggle, sacrifice to go through the challenges that is before us. As we read Psalm 81, we get a glimpse of this. If my people would only listen to me, if Israel would only follow my ways, how quickly I would subdue their enemies and turn my hand against their foes. Those who hate the Lord would cringe before him, and their punishment would be last forever. But you would be fed from the finest of wheat, with honey from the rock. I would satisfy you. Let me say that honey always represents the sweetness of God, the great things about God that bring joy, comfort, and peace. But let me ask you a question. Where's the honey found? It's found in the rock, that hard, difficult challenge that is before you. Now, as God shows us that often He doesn't simply take the problem away, but instead brings us through those challenges in order to gain the honey within them, He doesn't make us go through it unequipped or alone. We see in our text today that God has given the world Jesus, and later on the Holy Spirit, to be a servant, a guide, and a helper, with a promise to not break the bruised reed or quench that smoldering wick. The text is saying that yes, we are bruised, our energy, will, and resolve smoldering with just a hint of fire left in it. Jesus won't let that fire die. He won't let us be broken entirely. And from that bruising and challenge, through the difficult paths that teaches us and prepares us for what is ahead, God promises us that Jesus will hold on, will keep us going until He brings justice to victory. So I need to take a little better look at my prayer life. I need to take stock of the conversation that I have with God. I probably need to replace a lot of asking, demanding, and personal conversation with thanksgiving, praise, and wonder. And just perhaps I need to replace my talking with a lot more listening, knowing that God has the plan to get me through, equipped with the honey of God in hand by going through. Maybe it's time that we rededicate our lives to Jesus, not just for the immediate healing that we desire, but for the long road ahead, a road that leads us with Him to the cross, where the ultimate victory is found and our ultimate healing is granted. Let's follow Jesus, not to just get something from Him, but to be like Him.